you gonna hang out while we talk about this sweater? Does that sound good? Yeah? So you might have noticed that I've been wearing this sweater quite a bit as a bit of a teaser because I wanted to recreate it myself. I really love this sweater motif. It's super comfy to wear, and like many vintage sweaters, I have been wearing this one a little bit more frequently, but I prefer to make copies and then I wear the copies rather than the originals because I feel more confident washing them and maintaining them, and I feel less like I'm wearing them out. What is super exciting, and it's happened for the second time now, thanks to you all. You as a community are just wonderful, and I appreciate all of the support that you give me, including the fact that you've now found the pattern for this vintage sweater. So I've had some people ask me if I know the original pattern or I have the pattern, and thank you to this comment, I do, and I can direct you that way. I was originally going to basically stitch count this sweater together, which I've done in the past. I've done that in, I think, 2 times now for Craftmas, where I have just counted the stitches and reverse engineered the sweater, but it is definitely so much easier when I have the original pattern. One thing I want to do though today still is I'm going to take this sweater off, and then I would like to compare this sweater design and how it was knit up with the original pattern. Whoop. Am I too warm? Okay. I don't know how far I'll get with reconstructing this particular sweater during Craftmas, but I won't leave it hanging. I do want to fully make this sweater, so it might have to finish after Craftmas. I tend to like to take a break between the end of Craftmas, which is December 24th, and the new year to spend some time with friends and family and kind of relax and settle into a new year ahead. So we'll see how far we can get. So let me grab the original pattern book. Let me take this sweater off. I'll probably start by turning it inside out, and let's look at the inside of the sweater and see what we think. Okay, so the first thing that I want to point out is this wonderful float management. You can see that we've had a little bit of extra slack in some places, but it was pulled a little bit more taut. When you have these, they're basically called lice in traditional Scandinavian sweaters, and these 60s and 50s patterns kind of imitate that a little bit. When you have them in this number of rows, I think it's even number of rows, then you're always ending on the same side, and you can carry the yarn up without having to cut it. In the first ones, it looks like she didn't catch it quite as frequently as she moved up rows, but you can see on subsequent ones, she definitely caught that float a little bit more regularly. She wasn't always exact with how she did it. Sorry, I'm saying she, it's an assumption on my part, it isn't necessarily so. I'll just say the knitter. At some points the knitter caught it less, at some points they caught it more, but overall I'm just really enjoying how all of this float work looks on the back, especially when you come to the top yoke portion. I mean, wow, look at how well this float made it. So on the other side, this is where that mousse is, and you would have typically a very long float of that blue in the back here, but it was caught almost every other or every third stitch to make sure that you wouldn't get caught on the floats as you're putting this sweater on and off. So it's pretty amazing to see. I would say the sleeves are quite similar with the float management, especially carrying up and carrying across, and the motifs that are happening on the top of the sleeves. You can see some longer ends here, or ends where they had to change the ball of yarn maybe in the middle. I'm so sorry, I think I'm getting a little bit sick, so my voice might be slightly raw. But this is how the ends were woven in, and it still works quite well for me now. We have some holes where some of the tension maybe wasn't quite as strong as it could have been, but that's something that we can work out when we knit our version of the sweater. One thing I will say is that I thought that this ribbing at the collar was knit separately and then sewed on, because every time I attempted to put my sweater on, it is very, very tight in the hip area. And I realize now it's not because of this, but it's because of this color work that comes up very close to the collar here. So I'm going to have to take a look at the original pattern and see how close the color work comes to the collar area to see if there is something that I can do to manage that tightness. Now let's turn it over the back, because I have one thing to show you more on the inside here. And now you can see why I was saying she in the beginning, because we do have a name tag. Mary Lou Nissen is the My guess would be knitter and owner, but potentially it's the owner and not knitter, or the knitter and not owner. Who knows? I don't 100% know, but thank you so much, Mary Lou, for allowing me to have this beautiful sweater. I am so happy with it. Now, one other thing that you can see from the inside is the construction of the sweater, which is very typical construction of the 40s and 50s, which is that it was knit in 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces and then sewn together. So you knit the front, or typically you knit the back first, then the front, then matching sleeves, and then you seam everything up, and everything is knit flat in separate pieces. The original pattern gauge is 5.5 stitches to an inch, and I think you can see that here that it is pretty close to that gauge. However, I did some stitch counts with the original pattern versus this version of the sweater, and there are more stitches here. And of course, when you hold it up, the original pattern should be about 18 inches underneath the arm, and we are at 19, which makes sense as to why this sweater fits me so nicely, because that corresponds to a 38-inch bust rather than a 34/36-inch bust from the original pattern. So I think I'm going to knit it to approximately these sizes. I think the original knitter already made some changes to allow for that sizing change. I might just take their hint from it because I also like it very much. The other dimension that I think that they changed is the length from the bottom of the ribbing to the underarm. In the original pattern, it should be 14 inches. We are closer to 14.5 inches. And I might elongate it even more to 15 inches because I just like my sweaters to be a little longer because I have a very long torso. The ribbing should be 2.5 inches, so this ribbing is a touch short in comparison with the original pattern. So I might just elongate that. The original pattern has 10 of these little contrast dot rows. Again, in the original Scandinavian patterns, you would call these lice dots or lice patterns. This one has 12. So you can see that there was an elongation, like a slight enlarging of this pattern, which is, again, perfect for me because 34/36 is not my size. The original pattern has a sleeve measure from the underarm decreases here to the bottom, including ribbing, measure 18 inches. And this one is potentially over 19 inches, maybe 19.5, and it is still slightly short for me. I am quite tall and I have long arms. I would also prefer to have just maybe a touch longer sleeves, but overall, I think it's interesting to find a pattern that was knit up, but still modified to fit the individual knitter. Overall, I think it's really interesting to see this pattern because when I got the original pattern book, I was surprised to see that it was a 34/36-inch bust size because the sweater fit me quite well. But now that I looked at the original pattern and I took some of the measurements of this sweater, I realized that whoever knit this originally customized it for themselves. They made it one size bigger, which is why it fits me well because that's my size. What I think is important for me to do from here is to take full stitch counts because now that I know, so I did an initial stitch count at the bottom and I did one under the arms. Under the arms is over 100, I think, and at the bottom is like 96 or so. Which is more than the original pattern. So I want to see how this knitter modified her pattern in order to fit her size, to do a little bit of a comparison and maybe take some notes from that and make a few of my own adjustments when I'm starting to re-knit this. So I think that is what we'll be doing next time, to write up my own pattern. Some of the adjustments, like I said, is probably making the sleeves a little bit longer. They are already longer than the original, but I have long arms, so I need longer sleeves. Probably making the length a touch longer. I like how everything else fits me quite well. Oh no, the neckband. So like I said, the neck, when I put it on, is quite tight. I think it is the cast off used is quite tight as I'm feeling it, and I think it's more the cast off. Well, the color work too, so I might stop sooner before the neckline opening and the ribbing, and then use like a very loose bind off. Overall, it's such a beautiful sweater. Again, I'm feeling like I'm starting to get a little bit sick, so sorry if I wasn't super coherent, but I hope that you still liked looking at this sweater pattern with me. It is, It almost feels like a cheesy winter holiday Christmas type sweater, but in the best way, in my opinion. Like, I feel like some people would wear this to an ugly sweater contest, but I wear it unironically because I like it so much. There might be other motifs out there that are a little less like in your face, I guess, but I like this one a lot. I find it very, very cute. I am probably going to knit my sample on the knitting machine because I knit a lot on the hat lately, and so my hands are quite exhausted. So I'm probably going to lean on my knitting machine a little bit. But first, before I can even think about that, I think I have to write this up as a pattern. So next time, let's see how we can transform an original pattern, a sweater that fits me with some tweaks, into an overall pattern that I can use on my knitting machine to create this sweater. I hope that you'll join me then. Until then, here's some other cozy videos that you might enjoy. I'll see you soon. Bye!